The sun glared over the open field as players shouted across the grass, chasing after the ball with the kind of determination that made weekends worth living for. Among them, Ethan Carter sprinted forward, his competitive spirit outpacing his body's warning signs. He wasn't young anymore, though he liked to think otherwise. At 32, he still carried the same hunger to win, until his body decided it had other plans. One sharp twist, a snap of pain, and everything went silent. Ethan fell hard, clutching his knee as a wave of heat and agony pulsed through it. His teammates rushed over, their cheers fading into anxious whispers. "Don't move," someone said, but it was too late. His leg throbbed beneath his trembling hands. By the time the ambulance arrived, sweat and regret had soaked through his shirt. The drive to the hospital blurred into a haze of muffled voices and sterile lights. Ethan only remembered the cold, sharp sting of reality. His leg was injured, and his season was over. A week later, he limped into the Riverside Rehabilitation Center, a building that smelled faintly of antiseptic and coffee. The receptionist directed him to room 4B, where his assigned physiotherapist was waiting. Ethan expected an older man with graying hair and strict rules. Instead, the person who greeted him looked barely older than his younger brother. "Hi, you must be Ethan Carter," the young man said, offering a hand and a kind smile. "I'm Liam Hayes. I'll be working with you on your recovery." Ethan nodded, his pride pricked by the sight of someone so calm, so certain. Liam was soft-spoken but efficient, his movements deliberate. He guided Ethan through the first session with professional care, never rushing, never scolding. Yet beneath that composed demeanor, there was a quiet intensity in his eyes, a gentleness that made Ethan feel both comforted and unsettled. As the days turned into weeks, the two began to fall into rhythm. Ethan would arrive early, sometimes with a coffee in hand, and Liam would greet him with that steady, reassuring smile. Their conversations began cautiously, about sports, work, the weather, but gradually deepened into something more personal. Ethan spoke about his husband, Michael, who was often away for business trips. "He travels a lot," Ethan said one afternoon as Liam adjusted the brace on his leg. "We don't see each other as much these days." Liam nodded but didn't press. "That must be hard," he said simply. "It's just how life turned out," Ethan replied, forcing a smile. Yet the truth hung heavy in the air. His home felt emptier than it should. The next week, Ethan found himself looking forward to his sessions more than he wanted to admit. The pain of therapy was real, but Liam's voice somehow softened it. He had a way of making silence feel safe, like they could exist in it without needing to explain themselves. One afternoon, as rain pattered softly outside, the power flickered in the rehab room. The lights dimmed, leaving only the pale glow from the windows. Ethan laughed awkwardly. "Guess the building's as tired as my knee." Liam smiled, crouching beside him to check his posture. "Don't worry. We'll take it slow today." There was something in his tone, calm, reassuring, but layered with unspoken care, that made Ethan's chest tighten. Their hands brushed when Liam adjusted his knee support, and though it lasted only a second, Ethan felt it longer than he should have. Later that night, lying in bed with an ice pack on his leg, he found his thoughts drifting, not to his pain, not to his work, but to Liam's voice. The way he listened without interruption. The warmth in his words. Ethan turned on his side, trying to dismiss the thought as gratitude, nothing more. Yet deep down, he sensed something shifting quietly beneath the surface of his recovery. The following session, Liam noticed Ethan's hesitation during an exercise. "You're distracted," he said gently, his tone more observant than accusing. "Just tired," Ethan replied, though even he didn't believe it. Liam studied him for a moment, then nodded. "It's okay. Healing takes more than time, it takes honesty with yourself." The remark lingered long after Ethan left. Honesty with himself. He repeated those words on his drive home, wondering if there was something inside him that he had avoided facing. That night, Michael called from the airport, his voice distant and weary. "I'll be gone another week," he said. "You'll be all right?" Ethan's eyes drifted to the unused crutches leaning by the door. "Yeah," he murmured. "I'll manage." When the call ended, he sat in silence, hearing only the hum of the refrigerator and the faint echo of Liam's earlier words. Healing takes honesty. As the camera of the mind zooms out, Ethan sits alone at his kitchen table, his leg propped up, the night stretching endlessly around him. The physical wound may be mending, but something else, unseen and fragile, has just begun to stir. He doesn't know it yet, but his recovery is about to challenge more than his body. It will test his heart, and everything he thought he understood about love, loyalty, and the quiet spaces between them. Ethan's knee grew stronger with each passing week, but his thoughts grew heavier. The therapy room had become more than a place of recovery, it was a space where silence carried meaning, where each shared glance seemed to stretch time. Liam continued to treat him with the same steady professionalism, yet Ethan could sense a shift, a faint tension under their conversations, a care that went beyond duty. The connection between them was no longer confined to patient and therapist, it had grown into something unspoken, fragile, and dangerously sincere. One morning, after finishing a particularly demanding session, Ethan slumped back against the wall, laughing through exhaustion. "You're trying to kill me, aren't you?" Liam smirked. "Just trying to give you your leg back, not take your life." Their laughter hung in the air longer than it should have. When it faded, what remained was a silence charged with awareness neither dared to acknowledge. Ethan glanced away first, his heart thudding for reasons that had nothing to do with pain. Over time, they started sharing small parts of themselves beyond the clinic. Liam told him about growing up in a conservative town, where being different meant living quietly. He spoke of a boy he once cared for but lost because he couldn't promise a future. Ethan listened, moved by the vulnerability behind Liam's calm voice. "You ever regret it?" Ethan asked softly. "Sometimes," Liam replied. "But some connections aren't meant to last, they're meant to teach us who we are." The words lingered like a mirror Ethan didn't want to look into. That night, when Michael called from yet another hotel room, their conversation was polite, almost rehearsed. The warmth that once held them together had faded into routine. "You sound tired," Michael said. "Just therapy," Ethan replied. "Long day." After the call, he sat in silence, feeling more alone than before. It wasn't the absence of love that hurt, it was the absence of presence. The next afternoon, Liam offered to drive Ethan home after an extended session. The sky was gray, and rain began to fall in steady sheets. In the car, the sound of rain filled the pauses between their words. "Thanks for the ride," Ethan murmured as they pulled up to his house. Liam nodded, but didn't reach for the door handle. His eyes lingered on Ethan's for a fraction longer than politeness allowed. "You don't have to thank me for wanting to make sure you're okay." That simple sentence unraveled Ethan's composure. He felt seen, completely, quietly seen, for the first time in years. When Liam finally left, Ethan stood by the window, watching the car disappear into the rain, a storm swirling in his chest that had nothing to do with weather. Over the next few weeks, their friendship deepened in quiet, measured steps. They began having coffee after sessions, talking about films, about cities they wished to visit, about things they couldn't say to anyone else. One evening, Michael canceled dinner again, his voice hurried, distant. "Something came up at work," he said. "It always does," Ethan replied before hanging up. A moment later, his phone buzzed. "Liam, rough day? Want some company?" Ethan hesitated, staring at the message. Then, against the quiet warnings of his conscience, he typed back, "Sure." When Liam arrived, he brought takeout and an easy smile. They ate on the couch, laughing between bites, the air warm and easy. Yet beneath the laughter lay an ache neither could ignore. After dinner, they fell into silence. Liam turned slightly, his eyes tracing the faint scar on Ethan's knee. "You've healed well," he said softly. "Physically, maybe," Ethan replied, his voice almost a whisper. Their eyes met, and for a fleeting heartbeat, the world around them stilled. No words, no movement, just a fragile stillness pulsing with everything unspoken. Liam looked away first, clearing his throat. "I should go." Ethan nodded, his chest tightening. "Yeah. Thanks for coming." As the door closed, the silence in the room felt heavier than before. He sat there for a long time, the scent of food and rain still hanging in the air, wondering when gratitude had turned into longing. Days passed. Ethan tried to focus on recovery, but his thoughts betrayed him. Liam's absence at the next few sessions was explained as scheduling conflicts, yet the distance felt intentional. It was as if both had realized the danger of what had almost happened, and were silently stepping back from the edge. When Liam returned, the air between them carried restraint. They spoke little, their movements efficient, professional. But every so often, Ethan caught a flicker in Liam's eyes, sorrow, maybe, or fear. At the end of the session, Ethan stood, ready to leave, when Liam said quietly, "Take care of yourself, Ethan. Don't push too hard." Their hands brushed as Ethan took his jacket. The touch was brief but electric. Both men froze, then retreated, pretending it hadn't happened. That night, Ethan sat in his car outside his house, staring at his reflection in the windshield. He'd never crossed a physical line, but something deeper had fractured inside him. He had betrayed not through touch, but through thought, through yearning, through the quiet things the heart does when no one's watching. That he didn't know what scared him more, the guilt he felt, or the part of him that didn't regret it. The weeks that followed unfolded in silence. Ethan returned to his daily routines, work, errands, the gym, but everything felt slightly off, like the world had shifted by an inch and he was the only one who noticed. His knee was fine now, completely healed, yet his heart carried a limp. Michael came home one Friday evening after weeks away. He looked tired, his face drawn from travel and deadlines. "You look good," he said, almost surprised. "Stronger." Ethan smiled faintly. "Physically, yeah. The rest? I'm still working on." Michael nodded, mistaking the remark for humor, and kissed his forehead. The gesture was familiar but lacked the depth it once had. Their marriage had become polite, predictable, safe, but hollow. Ethan wanted to fix it, but every time he tried, his mind drifted to another voice, another quiet smile in a therapy room that smelled faintly of eucalyptus and rain. That he hadn't seen Liam since the last session. No calls, no messages. The distance hurt, but Ethan knew it was necessary. Some lines, once blurred, couldn't be redrawn. One morning, an email arrived from the rehabilitation center, a thank you note for completing the program, with a list of therapists who'd worked with him. Liam's name was there, printed neatly among others. For several minutes, Ethan just stared at it, debating whether to reply. He didn't. Instead, he closed the laptop and took a long walk by the riverside. The air was crisp, the city waking slowly. He passed couples walking their dogs, joggers greeting each other with smiles. Each face reminded him that life kept moving, with or without closure. He paused near the bridge, staring at the rippling water below. The reflection that stared back at him wasn't broken, it was just honest. He realized then that what had happened wasn't just about Liam. It was about everything he'd ignored, the loneliness, the silence, the slow unraveling of himself within a marriage built on routine instead of connection. That evening, when Michael returned from work, Ethan decided to speak, not out of guilt, but out of the need for truth. "Can we talk?" he asked. Michael looked up from his phone. "Sure. What's going on?" Ethan hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "I've been struggling. I think I've been lonely for a long time, and I didn't even see it happening. I met someone during my recovery who made me realize how disconnected I've felt, not just from you, but from myself." Michael's expression tightened. "Are you saying you cheated on me?" "No," Ethan said quickly, shaking his head. "Not physically. But I crossed a line inside me, emotionally. And I hate that it happened, but pretending it didn't won't fix anything." Silence filled the room. Michael stared at him, hurt flickering behind his calm exterior. "I wish you'd told me sooner," he said quietly. "I knew something was wrong, but I thought it was just the injury." "It was more than that," Ethan admitted. "The injury just made me stop running from what was broken." For a long time, neither spoke. Then Michael sat down beside him, his voice steady but soft. "I don't know how to process this yet. But I want to try, if you still want to." Ethan felt a knot in his chest loosen. "I do," he whispered. "I just don't want us to keep pretending everything's fine when it's not." They talked for hours, about distance, expectations, and the quiet ways people drift apart without realizing it. When they finally went to bed, the air between them was fragile, but it was honest. And honesty, Ethan realized, was its own kind of healing. A few months later, Ethan attended a charity marathon to support a local rehabilitation program. The crowd was lively, laughter blending with the sound of running shoes and music. Near the registration tent, he spotted a familiar figure handing out water bottles. Liam. Their eyes met briefly across the crowd. There was no rush of guilt or longing this time, only quiet understanding. Liam smiled, a simple, genuine gesture, and Ethan returned it with the same warmth. No words were exchanged. None were needed. As he walked away, Ethan felt something settle within him. He had once believed that healing was about going back to who he was before the fall. Now, he understood, it was about becoming someone stronger after it. That evening, he and Michael sat on the porch, sharing coffee as the sun dipped low. The silence between them felt different, no longer empty, but peaceful. Ethan glanced at the horizon, remembering Liam's words, "Some connections aren't meant to last, they're meant to teach us who we are." He smiled faintly. The ache was still there, faint but bearable, like the memory of an old injury that flares when it rains. Yet it reminded him he'd survived it, and grown because of it. The camera fades on Ethan's quiet reflection, his gaze steady, the evening light catching his face. The story that began with an injury ends not in regret, but in understanding, proof that even broken hearts can heal when met with truth.